lawyered it up. Out of this.
No, well, you're the 10 pages long and I charge you by the page.
Not by the line.
Yeah.
If it was by a page, it'd be 25 every day.
No, well, you're the 10 pages long and I charge you by the page.
Yeah.
Not by the line.
Not
Yeah,
on
there you
the
go.
bank, not on the square. But
No
it has
major injuries.
$600,000. So they want it.
Okay. 6 o'clock, so welcome everybody to our planning commission meeting, work session. It's September 28th of 2021. We'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Collins will lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Are there any conflicts that any of the planning commissioners have that they need to declare? None, so we'll move on to item number two, which is discussing a discussion regarding the general plan.
This is kind of a continuing on. So within the packet, what I sent to you was all the comments that we have received, whether they be from online, from the public open house meetings, and again from online. Comment period all ended this Saturday, so anything additional we get, but kind of wanted to get your guys' direction. I know we talked a little bit about the first 3 comments that are in your packet, but I wanted to continue to give them to you. It's page, let's see, the 9 pages of Glenda's, let's see, no, page 5 in your packet. At the bottom, it's, oh wait, I think Denise Bollinger, hers was an old one that you guys have seen. It's Kyla on the next page. Kinkad? I just murdered it probably. From that one on.
It's probably
Like,
Keela Kincaid.
It's what?
Kincaid.
Kincaid. Oh, there we go. Okay. Those are all the new comments from this year. So I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted me to look at and to change or from those comments. I mean, all these will be part of the general plan in the back of appendix. Under public comments, we'll install all of them in there, but wanted to see if you guys had read and if you agree with some of these that we need to change it. If not, like Mr. Peterson's, his was more concerned on the cemetery, which the general plan is not going to talk about. It talks about open space. The cemetery can be open space, so if the city council wants to look at that and review it and find places within that to purchase to make a cemetery, that'd be great. And then also his was cost issues of how we're gonna, especially within the Parks and Rec, how we're gonna come up with all this to make it happen. The great thing about a general plan is that it's just a pipe dream. Central Park in New York set in plans for about 30-35 years before it became to fruition. So if we don't plan for it, it will never happen. If it's not in a plan, it won't happen. So even though all these parks do cost, you know, 3.5 million, there's no way that the city's going to be able to afford that in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But if they start budgeting for it and can pick up some here and some there, again, it's just here are our needs. Here's where we're deficient. Here's some areas that we can look at and do. Overall cost, and then just kind of when they start doing their budget, just start looking at things that they can, hate to say it this way, click off or check off. But again, it's just hopes and dreams. Kayla's kind of, you know, it's hers is from UTA, so they liked it. From their standpoint, of course, we had a couple comments, written comments from the public open houses. One was love it. Love all that is happening and excited the future plans, nice work and fun activity park, including water feature of George Wallen. Mr. Saxton, the work and energy and time has gone into the plan is evident. Job well done. Mr. Stockham.
Yeah.
If you guys have read his, he had just moved into the Pioneer portion of town. And I don't know if you guys have comments on that. Kind of naming, I think it's 9 different sections of Roy, kind of trying to bring in the neighborhood. So, you know, someone says they say you're from Roy, and then they say, okay, which part? And you say whichever part, it kind of brings, oh, it's right, you know, right there. I know in Ogden, they have 14 different communities, areas, and, you know, they do take pride in it. A lot of people do know where they're from, which part of Ogden they're from. And so when they, you know, say, I'm from Ogden, I'm from the whatever district, it's kind of a pride thing. I know in the past, the city has looked at maybe, you know, having neighborhoods compete against each other, maybe even having some sort of medallion or something on top of the signpost as you enter it, saying, you know, this is the Pioneer neighborhood, or the, you know, the historic portion, or the Arsenal. You know, it could be done by little things on top, or just in the corner where it says Roy City, you could, you know, have that a different color and a different thing, and just name it.
Meadow Creek or whatever.
Yeah, so I really like that thought, and one thing we could do, you know, later in the general plan, you know, a few years or whatever, is maybe create even neighborhood plans that specifically to those districts or neighborhoods, so they're a little bit more specific to that and not worry about the entire. So his was more concerns about trails, how to get to the DNRG trail, places that he likes to walk. I know our trails master plan within the general plan does call for some north-south more than just the DNRG. One thing the general plan didn't have in it was a trail on 156. Especially with UDOT widening it. It's in our transportation master plan, but I want to get it into the parks plan as well, portion of the general plan, where it kind of guides UDOT when they purchase all those properties or done widening it to help create some sort of linear
Okay, we're
park.
talking 5,600,
Yeah.
the transportation corridor that they want to put in green spaces.
Yep.
Okay.
So from 1900 west to 3500 west.
Have a bike lane in there.
Yeah, it kind of meanders through. In some places it might be deep enough to have a little pocket park. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to North Salt Lake, get up on 2600 south on Highway 89, you go up and you just turn right and head south. I think I was 14 when that park was put in. And it's just a linear pathway, planted trees, had a little pocket park in it. You know, it's used all the time. It's just a nice way of dressing up a street that's usually pretty busy. In comparison, 12th Street and Wall from Monroe to beyond,
Up by Harrison.
they widened 12th Street, but didn't have the same concept and left it just bare. Now it's just weeds. And so if they'd had some sort of linear park in their plans to show that, it may have been different. So from that aspect, I think most of these were just, you know, good intentions. I'm glad they showed up and read the document or listened to the 46-minute video online and provided some comments. I know Glenda's, hers was more of going back, you know, punctuation, grammar. I think she had a few comments in there which were great ideas, and from the last time we talked, you told me just to kind of go through them and figure out which ones applied. I should address everybody. Mr. King, his was more concerns with when the fuel station went in front of Harmon's, how it wasn't ADA compliant in many aspects. The bad part about that is that's more of a site plan review rather than general plan. Even then, when we did look at the site plan, having someone in a wheelchair go into a place that's strictly cars didn't make sense. The bus stop is near Burger King where there is a public or an ADA accessibility to get into there. Going to Kent, you're going more into the walkways rather than through the fuel station. So again, it's always nice to hear and see people that are reviewing the plans and making some comments, even though they might be missing the point that it's a 50,000 foot level look at Roy rather than, you know, on feet on ground. Everybody got kind of the comments that Taurus had provided. I don't know if anybody else has anything that they went through and looked at, concerns with or comments on needing changes. I know the biggest one that Taurus has on here that I've already told the company that wrote it is we need to change form-based code to mixed use.
There's one place where we don't want to do it. If I get the page number, maybe 52 or something like that. I didn't list it on here. It
Okay.
describes and defines form-based.
Okay.
So what I was only changing is those where we've changed it to mixed use.
Okay. Well, maybe we can look, maybe does it still apply to have the
Not
definition?
form-based at all, but
Right.
I didn't change that one because I didn't want to make that
Okay,
decision.
well, I will look at that as well.
I missed the discussions on this. Is there some kind of taboo associated with the term mixed use here in Roy?
No,
Okay.
It's better than form-based.
Depending on who you ask.
Well, I guess that's what it sounds like we're leaning toward mixed use and form based is the one that's like really taboo.
Yeah,
That's
when
what
we-
everybody else is using.
when we started the downtown rezone, it did start out as a form-based code. It turned into a 3-word swear word. As soon as someone said form-based code, people
High density.
got up in arms, very similar to high density. So taking that, changing it to mixed use, modifying it, it's really it's still a form-based code, but it's a hybrid. It's been changed enough to some of the old zoning standards mixed in with some of the form-based thoughts.
Okay.
So that's why we switched it to mixed use, and it seemed to be not as detrimental in wording as form-based or high density.
The meeting we had down at the school, I was talking with an older couple, and they were wondering what mixed use was, and so I was explaining that, you know, it could be retail or restaurant or something on the bottom, and apartments. I said, well, we're going back to the 40s and 50s.
New York City.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, mixed use was what it was before zoning really came into play.
But they liked it, because they said they know of more seniors that are trying to get out of houses and go into apartments because they can't take care of the houses and stuff.
I think we have 1 or 2 left in Roy that, you know, that used to be a commercial site and they had residential behind it. Or, you know, here's the commercial and their house was attached to it. You'll see, you know, I know Clearfield has a few, Ogden has a few. I think every city still has a couple that are there. And that's just how it was.
Mhm.
Worked up there, lived behind here. And so, yeah, we're kind of going back to the pre-zoning aspect of life. But it really makes sense. You know, if I can walk to work, if I can walk to get stuff, I'm gonna use less of my car. And then it does help with not just my health now, but it's, you know, emissions into the atmosphere because of my car or lack thereof. So, you know, New York is that way. I don't think you want to drive a car in New York or even own a car. But so kind of going back.
It's really, I think, having a good mix of different types of housing, you know, because if everything was mixed use or everything was high density or 1 acre single family. None of that works in and of itself. And so that's where I think we've got a good mix.
Yeah, I think it's
The
good.
places that is in place, I think are appropriate for that. kind of
Yes,
use.
I was gonna say is, downtown and Front Runner Station to me is the best places for it.
Well, you can't build,
Yeah, I
you
think
can't build
maybe
that
we
stuff around the
recommended
front
that one
runner
time.
station.
You know,
Where you can.
at 5200 south and 2700 west, where there's no trains, stops, no
Bus
buses,
stops, no.
it doesn't make sense to do something really high density like that, but along transit, it does help. So anything from anybody else of things that they saw that they liked, concerned about?
On the trails, it's got a bunch of trails like the Rocky Mountain
Yes.
Power Corridor, the canals and stuff. And are those showing future?
Yes, those
Or
are,
is that trying to show what we've
I
got?
think I addressed
no,
that.
those would be future
Yeah, I
ones.
can't remember where it's, yes.
A lot of it, what page are you on?
That was on 12.
Okay,
It's true. Yes, there's no, the Howard Slow on canal or proposed, they not existing at this time.
yeah, so they would be. So we need to amend that to show proposed. Because DNRG does exist, but they have the same colors, everything else.
I don't know if it's gonna be UDOT's call, if we have to say, but where it crosses at 5600 south, that needs to be under or over.
DNRG,
Yeah,
yes, I believe in their EIS, their environmental impacts study. It makes mention to do one of the two. I think it's more over than under.
I
It's
mean,
not
I-
necessarily cheaper, it's just these people feel safer. Because going under,
Afraid it'll fall down.
it's dark, it's people
At
can
night or.
just kind of sit there and do things that they shouldn't be doing, where over it's gonna be open to everybody, chain link fence versus, so I think they recommended over. But yeah,
yeah, because that's just a major congestion point, because you have stoplight, and you have a trail, and then the school's on, and you have that
I think the
great stoplight.
I think UDOT's gonna force the school to have them cross where the DNRG is.
I'll go up.
Instead of having a crosswalk right there, go over, up and around. I know it's longer, but it's safer.
It's not that far.
No, it's not. I think that's why they're in favor of it.
That was one of the things we talked about when we were talking about the trails and
Yeah.
everything.
So I'll have them show proposed on all the others. I think it's a great idea to have it underneath the Rocky Mountain. Clinton has it in some portions of theirs. Most of it is just an agreement with Rocky Mountain to allow it. Same with the Layton Canal hook, or the slough. Most of it is actually owned by Roy, so it's just a matter of getting Public Works and trails, or not trails, but parks to just install something. It's, it is there around where they have the fishing pond. Installing it elsewhere would be good too. The great thing about the trails is Western Weaver, including Roy, Hooper, West Haven, Plain City, Marriott, Slaterville, all received there's a grant to do a trails master plan for Western Weaver County. So we will contribute a little bit to that, but by the end of it, we'll have a whole master plan for trails, not just including Roy, but all throughout, so we can kind of interconnect and connect them.
Well, that's what I like with I think you call them regional corridors, if I'm using the term right, for 5648, is building in some of the bike lanes or things like that, because if you can create some east-west connectivity between those trails, I mean, it opens it up to where you can go to Salt Lake, you can go hit all the Ogden trails eventually. I know West Haven's got that in their plans to tie in their trails a little bit better.
Yeah, West Haven
So it
actually
just opens that up.
connected the DNRG trail to the Ogden's 21st Street trail system.
Okay, so I know you had to go through some neighborhoods, so they've got that connected.
Yeah, they finally got that all finished up. I think it was a year and a half ago. So you can actually go from Ogden Canyon to Provo Canyon.
Awesome. If you get some east-west connectivity through some of those neighborhoods and things like
Yeah.
that are safe passages, then that just opens up a whole new.
I think one that we need to put in there, if you guys are okay. Riverdale has a nice biking system that connects into 4400 South. So maybe show a trail or something coming from theirs, going down to the front runner station at least. And of course, showing one on 56.
The homeless people would get off, drove right into Riverdale, right?
No.
Instead of coming in.
Anybody can.
Oh, that's just first thing popped in my mind. Of course, because I see them all the time. But what do no, I'm just excited. I'm just kind of like, I've been chomping at the bit for a while. Because it started, especially with how fast the North Improvement Center is getting built and filled out. And just watching the massive amount of traffic and the fights every morning just to go through there. I mean, heck, if I leave at 7:30 to get there at 8, it takes me almost 20 minutes just to get from my house, if it's 630 100 West, just, onto the base. Because there's so much traffic. But I'm thinking, with the Air Force Museum there, center there, it's like, what are we doing to attract all the people that need to go out on lunches, business meetings, and especially with the defense sector there? I mean, huge. What do we have?
They've had a lot of subcontractors wanting to move in. So a lot of cities are feeling the pressure of that for office space and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think by Northrop Grumman, it will change downtown.
Yeah, and I think that would be,
Downtown
Roy,
Sunset, and Clearfield will probably be more effective than any of the cities around.
Sure.
Because of that.
And I know it's one of the cons is like, oh, well, you're gonna compete with Riverdale and Clinton that are already developed, like, so kind of, but not really, because you can't get directly, you can get to Riverdale off I-15, but you still have to go down in at 5600, you could just stop
Yeah.
right off and go, I
That's
think
gonna
it would,
change too, isn't it?
people won't
Getting off
get there.
I-15 over.
That'll change.
Getting off of the railroad?
Not for, off of I-15 on Riverdale. That's still gonna be open.
That should still, that will remain, even with the 5600 South interchange, they still have they have a flyover lane that goes right to it. So that will still, one trail I will put on there as well, this one kind of popped up in a quick hurry. They call it the Three Gates Trail. Those who are familiar with Hillfield, the Army has a train station where they repair all the locomotives. That's going away, but the line's still there. So the state had funded purchase of that rail line. They're going to remove the rails and make it a trail. So they call it Three Gates because it goes from 650 to the 1800 North new one to 56 and then actually goes into Ogden. So they'll convert that into a trail. It might get converted to another people mover of some sort, but it won't be a rail line. But so I'll put that one on there too.
Is that the one that runs behind Harmons?
Yes. UDOT's already preserving the corridor underneath because it's an Army rail and they have to keep the corridor there. So in their reconstruction, it won't go anywhere. And that's usually the biggest hurdles is how to get a trail across the UDOT project. And this one's already existing. So I'll make sure that one's on there too.
If everybody look at page 25, we'll everybody meet Steve because he's going to do the work.
Okay.
Up on the right side of the page, there's a thing called legend. The first,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, go ahead.
okay.
gotta rename it.
The first three of them are current. At the time this was written, the new ones are what? Station North, South, and Central.
Yep.
So I think we should change those to be correct. And then there's also a little east and west quarter, the little blue, where the purple one, where the Hinkley Airport is. I'm sure you know more about this than I do, Steve. I'm just,
All streams and canals or,
no, in downtown, sorry,
Right,
in downtown, they are known as. Never mind, I just answered it.
okay.
And my notes are not always,
Did you rest your case?
not yet.
He's skipping that issue. Okay,
Okay. Page 10,
on me.
the typewritten stuff is numerical order, the other was thoughts I missed the first time. around.
Oh,
Okay. Where are we? I'm on page 23, so if I get to 10, it might help me.
yeah, Mike,
It might already-
it's a map.
Yeah,
Future growth.
there's some little business area things that are there. Now, there's three little red
Nodes, yeah.
nodes. Somebody one time in one of the big boys meetings talked about maybe naming them. Steve, do you know anything about that?
No.
I don't,
Yeah, they're named major business centers. What more do you want?
I don't want anything. I just want to bring up an issue. Okay, the jury will decide what we did. Okay.
I don't think that's a bad point, though, when you talk about neighborhood identity. That's one thing that
Yeah,
really kind of lacks a
I
little
mean-
bit in Roy is kind of those neighborhood
That's
identities.
the Kent's Market area.
one of them's in Kent, one of them's in Kent, we have the,
Weininger's Market area.
But the point I'm making here
Kent's
is,
Corner.
I think having names for things like that, so it's like, oh, Kent Square, whatever the
Yeah.
case is, I don't care.
No,
what it's
that's fine.
named. But having some names, and it just kind of creates a little bit more of an
Well, we could
identity to
even,
that
we could
area.
even look at the purple. Because there are two purple, well, a couple
Yeah,
purple
three
ones.
purple.
2, 3, 4.
So look at naming those or putting some sort of name in it, and it could even be associated with the neighborhoods. You know, whatever neighborhood,
Like brand.
Meadow Creek
business.
Square.
yeah.
For sure.
that would work.
Well, I'll even look at what was the subdivision names,
Susan hit the lottery.
you know, if some of them were done all about the same time, what were the names?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Just
No.
creates an identity with it. That's a good point, Doris.
okay,
Oh, okay, the other one I've got is on page 32. Talking about parks, we're talking about additional parks. I think what there's 54.5 acres we're proposing,
54.5, yeah.
something like that. Should we, what does everybody think about having some of the parks zero-scaped or hardscaped? Because we're going to have water problems forever and ever, or at least not our lifetime. So it could be a consideration.
How many acres do we have now versus what they recommend?
Right. And does it, I don't know, I can't remember if it actually talks about landscaping the parks certain ways or at all.
Yeah.
In here, or is it
I mean,
just,
obviously, we don't want to make the soccer fields out of cement, but
Right. I think that could be an internal policy from just the Recs department that xeriscape what they can, unless it's an active, you know, like West Park. That's got baseball diamonds,
yeah,
soccer
right,
fields and
no,
lacrosse.
not all of it, but you know, anyhow. that
No,
was-
I'll at least make note
That
and
was thought.
I'll look into it a little bit more.
I think part of, I'm just thinking out loud here, but you know, as you're urbanizing, part of the identity of a park is for people to find something green.
Oh, yes.
So,
I mean, you can have a park, like, I mean, the Rocky Mountain Power one is a good thing, that, you know, it could be just a xeriscape linear park with some benches and, you know, places to kind of pass it, where you're not gonna have active stuff going on other than the trail itself. DNRG trails is that kind of aspect, that's zero scape.
yeah,
with weeds and stuff that come up.
Don't mix those terms, because that's not.
It's a natural
Yeah, there you
vegetation.
Natural scape.
But, you know, I could look in and see, I mean, if it does start talking about how it should be landscaped, I'll throw in that xeriscaping should be an option.
And if we never did it, it still looks good that we're trying to conserve.
Right. And I know the mayor's asked Travis to look at places that we can.
Do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, City Hall could be one of them, other than this little park here, but you know, can we xeriscape some of the landscaping around City Hall, around the other little places, so.
I know this recommends that for the park strips as well, potentially, you know, I know there's the strip that's kind of caught some attention, but we have that in here, potentially doing the.
Yeah. And our
stuff.
ordinance now encourages, it doesn't say has to. but
Right, but encourage.
It encourages you to
No
use water
prohibition.
wise plants and stuff. Not as specific as flip your strip or, you know, drip system for drought tolerant. And
Oh, there was one thing I did read here that they suggested with that Ogden, the light, you know, where if you have traditionally like darker neighborhoods or something, you know, Ogden.
To illuminate.
Yeah,
Get better
illuminates
illumination.
their front porch and
Sensors,
stuff.
so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
goes on when it's dark.
I did like that idea. I mean, I don't know where a lot of the major crime areas, but you see people complaining about all the time coming in their homes. I'm thinking if it's a lot brighter, where everybody has opportunity. I think. that
And
would encourage-
again, that's
maybe the
kind of
police
what-
department would even
what these
have
general
to-
plans are is kind of guides that the
Yeah.
police department put programs together where it be, you know, neighborhood watch or like, you know, does the city help fund, you know, new streetlights, or do they promote the program of your front porch lighting? So, yeah, those little things are good to have in there. Again,
And we don't get to worry about the funding of it, so.
Yeah, these are suggestions. We don't have.
again,
we don't
this
have-
is, you know, if Roy had all the money in the world, what would we like? And just, you gotta.
We
get
would
into
like
plans.
Monterey Bay if we had all the money.
I don't,
Need to move mountains closer.
yeah. We'll just wipe out South Weaver, Hillfield.
Right, I already saying we should just annex Sunset, just take them over anyways.
No, I don't want to cross county lines. That's a-
Annex them into Weaver.
Oh, there we go. We'll let Clinton do that.
No, because
Or
then I have to
Clearfield.
go with a petition. to
Tell
do
them-
that.
tell them over south.
I got a couple more,
Okay,
and I don't know where they go in here and what we say, they're not necessarily land use issues, but along with saving water, we ought to be saving energy, okay? And basically, if we build any new buildings, or when we encourage people to build buildings, maybe they ought to be looking at solar energy, or solar panels, or those kinds of things, so that there's less demand on the electric grid, okay? And also, we, the city, have some charging stations at the public library, if I remember, for vehicles. Well, it's just probably in 10 years, almost all the vehicles are going to be electric in the city.
Okay.
And so we need to maybe put a couple of them out here in front and a couple of other places around so that people have access and can use. And to me, it makes sense for the city vehicles to be electric because you only go 50, 60 miles a day. And that's basically their range. You know, we're not long haul trucking to New York. So I think both of those, there's some place in there, both of those ideas should be maybe talked about a little bit.
okay, no,
We offer lead credits on commercial construction. Should we?
in this kind of plan, it's always,
Pie in the
You know,
sky.
It's probably the appropriate time to talk about it, isn't it?
yeah, and then, yeah. So,
And there will just Roy have like a, what is it, what's the carrot that they're dangling in front of businesses?
Isn't that what the
tax
CR
incentives and stuff.
isn't that what the CRA is about?
Yeah, the CRAs have some control over that, help on certain things. I think, you know, trying to get them to be green there might be more, some incentives, not just the city, but, maybe the state and county can help as well. But again, having them in here doesn't hurt the general plan by making suggestions of how do we become more energy efficient, whether it be solar, wind, electric.
And two anecdotal stories. One, we did solar power on our house about 5 years ago. The largest utility bill we've had since then is $8.97.
Wow.
So it was about $200 a month prior to that.
Can you afford that?
Thinking about putting the wife to work. Secondly, when Schwarzenegger was governor, of California, his EPA director told him that they could avoid building, I believe it was 7 power plants if they required all new buildings in the state to have white roofs instead of dark roofs. I mean, it costs you no more to put out white tar paper than it does black tar paper. And so I'm thinking maybe we can encourage that kind of thing, even with, private buildings, which certainly the city should do it if we build any new buildings, or we re-roof.
The idea comes from California.
Aren't they all moving
Okay.
here?
You know what?
Aren't they all moving here?
Mr. Chairman,
No.
please remove this gentleman right here.
Actually,
Okay,
the
easy.
They just keep going more down.
Go back to San Francisco.
the imports that are coming to Utah, number one, come from Idaho.
Okay,
Nevada's second, California's third.
Really, most people coming in are from Idaho, huh? You're not like in the cold?
I don't know.
No.
better business here than Idaho. More opportunity. Okay, further finance saith not, I'm done.
Good thoughts, appreciate
How
it.
do you rest your case?
Now I rest my-
In some of my wish list on, some of these new buildings that come in is, could they have rooftop gardens? Rooftop, have a gazebo or something so people can use it as a deck and, stuff like that, so. Those are things I'll try to help encourage.
Yeah.
But, rooftop gardens would help as well.
I think if you do that, you want to be sure to make that a credit system and not a mandatory system. And we want to do everything we can to encourage people to want to build here first.
Right.
And not make it prohibitive.
And the incentive on that could just be, extra height or extra something. And have a caveat that it's, get an 80-foot max, but if you do rooftop gardens or something else, then you can go another half the floor up, or I think that would help incentivize without the city really having to pay anything, but yet
What's our minimum landscape requirement on most of our commercial?
it's changed.
Yes,
The old one used to be 10%. Now with the mixed use, someone still wanted the 10%, so it got left in, but also the new aspects of the mixed use. Anywhere there's not a building stuff would be some sort of landscape, but it does encourage xeriscaping and stuff.
I think that's where you could give maybe some return, with a rooftop park or garden or something like
I
that.
mean, to me, if that's an open space element,
Right.
doesn't need to be on the ground, it can be up on top, so. A lot of times, most of them, landscape those little corners of the parking lot they can't use anyways.
Right. Well, now they have to use those for stormwater retention.
Yep. Anything else? from
yes,
the-
I have a question for you. We tabled our guy that wants to build the 40
Uh-huh.
condos. And have you met with him? Is it, or you?
We've had
What are you doing?
several conversations.
So you
He's
got-
met with the fire department, myself. So he should be back the first meeting in October.
And his problem still is because we have that 6-foot setback on the 4th floor, I think it is.
That was
Brought that
again
up.
part of my conversation and I misread. I went one column too far where it is required, but not his zone. So that one will have been eliminated.
So that's not an issue anymore for him. Then my solution doesn't count.
I'm just curious where that came from.
I think it was
That makes sense.
in the original form-based code as it was written, but.
Mixed use,
Yeah. But the,
call it what you want. you know.
the original.
Yeah.
And then the modified
It
got
wouldn't look-
modified
it
a
wouldn't
bunch
look as
where
New
that
York
got eliminated,
skyscraper.
but when we
Because it said.
brought the front runner station into the same table, it reappeared. So it's front runner station has that requirement, not downtown.
Okay, so explain, again, my engineering mind wants to have some rationale for that.
Aesthetics.
I think it's just so there isn't a straight wall.
Yeah.
You know, if you go down, most people were concerned with having that wall of buildings and therefore we're just creating a canyon. So as it steps after so often.
I get it. Or what makes a little more sense if you want to eliminate that is, you know, create, I don't know, I'm not sure the words coming to me right now. I've already worked my day, so my work brain shut off, but undulations in the facade of the building, right? Because they're right. When you do something like that, it really screws up the entire architectural plan of the building. Because those are levels that are stacked bearing walls. And when you try to shift everything 6 feet, that messes up your hallway, your units, and it almost makes it so it's not worth it.
Until you look
That's not
at,
what we want to do.
until you look at Ogden City Hall. The first 3 floors are wider, the next floor is a little smaller, goes up to the 8th floor, and it goes a little small, so it does,
It does.
buildings have done that. so.
I know they have.
But don't they have a 7 core structure?
They might, I
Small.
mean,
That's
I'm
usually
not
the way.
an engineer or an architect.
You mean either, I just look at that.
Because when that was brought up, I thought, that makes zero sense at all from a cost standpoint. And I totally get where they're coming from on a building like that, where it's kind of small.
Yeah.
That's gonna increase the costs a ton
So-
for 1 floor.
That might be something we look at later for the front runner station. Do we still want that?
Or when we have a public hearing, bring that up.
I wonder if there's just some other ways we can address that. We don't want this square
Well,
without,
they still have to do some sort of undulating.
Right.
Decks and canopies and stuff that come out. so.
And like when we were talking about it a little bit in even the downtown zone, like there behind Planet Fitness, where you've got those apartments and those houses, you don't want to build something that's a couple of stories high and just have it be this wall in their backyard. And so kind of where I learned about that was more, building something there, but then setting back that second story. So it doesn't appear this dominating building right in their backyard. They've got the building at kind of the ground level and then it just steps back. So I can see the purpose behind it, but I can see also the engineering issues that
But again,
creates.
that's a minimum, and if they wanted to step back 12, 13 feet,
Right.
it now makes it easier, they can do that, but.
Because it's dependent on their setback from
Yeah.
the other property. Because if they step back further,
right,
then you can have more of that.
yeah.
I mean,
That wall effect.
downtown east by Harmon's has that automatically after 100 feet from back of curb, you can go from 60 to 80 feet, so the architect needs to be able to figure that out structurally, how else then they can jump 20 feet in the level.
Didn't you already have like a minimum height requirement in that zone though, already that? So it just kind of,
Yeah,
the
you
way
still
my
have-
brain was working there, I'm like, okay, so he has a, what,
40.
40 foot minimum, so that's only gonna affect the very top floor.
Yes.
So that didn't make any sense to me.
Well,
Anyway,
he loved it when I said, I apologize, I was wrong. But anyway, back to the general plan.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm glad you brought it up because that was something that was kind of rattling around in my brain after that happened.
I think it means you get to build.
Claude, do you have anything?
Yeah.
And again, after tonight, if you finish reading it or whatever, and you have a comment, please don't hesitate to send it to me.
Yep.
I'll send it out to everybody else as well, just so they know what the comment is, and when we have the public hearings for the general plan, then hopefully everything's been modified already to.
Are we going to send this up to the current council or are we going to send it up to the new council?
Well, a lot of it depends.
Okay. I
When
wasn't
do we
answer. I was
set-
looking for it. but
When
go
do we,
ahead.
when do we set the public hearing for our end
Yes,
will depend on when it gets to them.
just as a matter of principle, I'm not thrilled about lame duck legislatures of any kind. I
And-
think the people that are going to be involved with it should be the ones voting on
And
it.
that's kind of where we're leaning. I mean, even if, say, we wanted to do a public hearing as quick as we could. Well, yesterday was the day I had to notify the paper in order to be on October 12th meeting. For a
Well,
public
we're getting
hearing.
close to Thanksgiving.
So
and
right
Christmas.
now
I don't
it's
think
already-
These
we're
are
gonna-
3 weeks, right? on the
Yeah,
public
so
hearing.
right now it's already pushed to the first week in, or first meeting in November. You know, by that time, to get it to the council, it'd be December. They don't have a meeting the first, well, I know they won't have anything the end of the month. So the
Yeah, I
timing
mean,
already pushes it to the new
Kind of
council.
makes it problematic to get there, but again, my principle.
You know, if I
basically
started
is-
notifying last week about public hearing, we might could get it to them by November.
I don't see.
I have to go pick up my wife, she's having a car issue.
Oh, I'm sorry to
Well,
hear
she's the
that.
boss, so, but thank you, Chris.
All right, don't listen to anything Tori says.
We already have.
That's my
It's a little late
And
for
as soon
that.
as he leaves, we vote to vote him off. the island.
All right, see.
Yeah,
you.
well,
Luckily, it's not our vote, is it?
Vote 'em off the island.
But, yeah,
So I mean, just,
yeah, right now, everything's kind of leaning to be January, February before they do it.
I may have had a few bad experiences with the Nevada legislature.
And I, knowing Brian and Jan, they probably wouldn't want to vote on it, knowing that they're leaving. I think if they were running, it might be a
Oh,
different story.
different, I mean, we already will know the election by November, the,
Right.
whatever it
But
is.
knowing that they're
But
not
we
running,
Still,
The
we're
16th,
gonna have new ones.
Yeah.
that's the canvas.
You know, when you.
And it just makes sense to me that, hey, the people that are gonna be driving the stagecoach should choose the horses.
Yep.
Didn't know I was a cowboy, did you?
Vegas. Brian, did you have anything?
Not related to general plans, but if we're off to the,
Not yet.
not on the general plan.
Okay.
No.
And I had,
Just, we've been going on this for quite a while.
yes, we have. I mean, COVID didn't help.
Yeah.
The length of time it took to get the downtown ordinance passed didn't help. I didn't want to have couple large documents in front of
Good
because they
call.
would start getting, not that they couldn't, but start getting confused of which one was what and which one said what. And so it kind of, some things kind of made it prolong. I've already had to extend the contract with the people. Luckily, Wasatch Front Regional Council is covering all of that,
That's good.
but it's very limited on what I can have them do, so.
Okay.
They'll do one rendition changes and then they'll do help with presentations, but if further changes are required later,
Cost money.
it will follow me. Then I'll start kicking and screaming. Okay,
I'd like to see that.
Chair, that's all I have then.
All right, then let's move on to the next agenda item, which is Commissioner's Minute. I just wanted to bring up a little bit, I guess I just, reflected a little bit since our last meeting, the public hearing, especially on the catwalks. And I don't know, something with that just didn't really sit right with me a little bit. We have the public hearing. We didn't find out about that until basically it was on the agenda. I saw a little bit on Facebook. But if it was it a push from the city that pushed to close the catwalks, or what was kind of the driving force? I know there was the one by Roy Jr. That clearly was a problem and needed to be addressed.
It was threefold. It was one, the applicant on 5200 South, the commercial property there. The Roy Junior High catwalk, those were more of the driving force. I've had several conversations with both Public Works and Parks and Rec about it, and they were all in favor of closing it, but it didn't come more towards till the Roy Junior High and the street wanted to be vacated, so.
Yeah, because I know you weren't the driving force on it, but if it was Public Works and Parks and Rec, I think we should have seen something or some sort of presentation from them, or some documentation, something saying this is the problem we face. Cause I think that's pretty unfair to the public to kind of get blindsided by letters. I don't know that that's really fair to put us in front of a public hearing when we don't really have any real facts or motivators or saying, hey, these are the costs to maintain it, these are the issues with it. It's kind of like you're flying blind. And I mean, there's some of those that were just logical that, yeah, were no brainers that I think we handled, but I wasn't in a position to even begin to entertain closing the other ones because there was nothing before me that would do it. But I just felt like I was in a hard spot. I don't know how the rest of the
It came up
commissioners
in the
felt.
council meeting, right? That's where it first came up.
That was after the letters.
That was after that.
That was
And the
after-
letters were just the
Okay.
notifications that were
Okay.
required by ordinance to notify them that within 300 feet that this was happening.
Right,
So it wasn't a letter just, out of the blue, just it's the same letter that gets sent out for a rezone request
right.
or anything else. So it was just, let you know, this is what's being requested. Please make, come to the meeting and make any comments. So it wasn't any more informative than any other letter that I've given, or it's just as informative as the letters. So, coming to you, it's just by requirement that it came to you versus
Right.
to the council. It's just the council talked about it a week before, even though they
That's where.
probably shouldn't have, just.
But because.
But my issue isn't really necessarily with that. It's more with if Public Works and Parks didn't want to maintain those, or if that was a driver, I would have liked to have seen some sort of presentation
Okay,
or
that was what
comment.
was talked about in the council meeting. That's how I know.
Well, okay, that's fine, but that's.
I know what you're saying.
Your point is that we should know that. All of us
We should know that, and that should be part of the information that's presented at a public hearing, so that the public knows or understands kind of what
Do
the,
you feel comfortable
the
dropping a
driving
dime in
force.
Parks and Rec and?
Well, I mean, they did what they did and didn't come, so.
I mean, and I know you're in a tough spot and you don't you are there representing the city, and so, I mean, it's not necessarily, my concern is more if we're going to do that in a public hearing, have a public hearing, then I think we need to understand what the motivations are, what the driving force is, so that not only can we make an informed recommendation to the council, but I feel like the public has a right to know or understand what are the issues, what are the problems? Is this a cost thing? Is this a safety thing? Is this really ADA? What are the ADA requirements of a park? I know that they need to be accessible. Does that egress have to be accessible, or are there other
Right.
access? And those are the things that I just don't feel like we had the right information in front of us. And so that's, I guess, the point that I'm making. So I don't know, I'm happy to
Well,
address that, or
I'll pass
if
it
you wanna
on to
pass
any
it along,
future times they want to vacate those, they need to have more information.
But there's some other things too. I think the cutouts on the driveways, we had a little bit of information. I did some more research on my own on that. But there's some of that stuff where it'd be nice to have a little bit more information as to what maybe kind of the motivators
Or at least have somebody there
Factors on
to
that.
present the case, other than just.
Well,
you
they,
speaking for them.
they don't have much of a case. They show up and say, hey, we don't want to maintain this. That was my takeaway, is they don't want to spend the effort of doing the
come to
cleanup
the
and
public
whatnot.
hearing and say that.
Oh,
Well,
Or,
the great
or give
thing-
us a report that says that and gives the reasons why, what are the costs?
Right.
But if it's an existing catwalk, that's something that should be being maintained by
Yes,
by the city.
Like say them just not wanting to do it, they need to have a reason other than they just don't want to do it.
and
I
they-
mean,
their
there should
reason
be a
was
cost
they didn't
or-
want to do it. If that was costing,
Yeah, if
then
it cost, they
yes,
should've,
okay.
Well, if it's a cost, they
but-
can make that argument to say, look, this is what we figured, that maintaining this is costing us from snow removal through weed removal or whatever,
And we say, thank you very much, take it up with the council. So,
But I mean, it's a public right of way, so I have a hard time wanting to take away public right of way without a good reason, but I think I
Well,
made my
we did-
point
we
there, and I'm
did-
not trying to
we
throw
did-
people under the bus. I just feel like on things like that, we should have a little bit more information. The people who are wanting that to
and
happen
you need to
should.
make secret phone calls and tell us what's going on.
Seemed like the first one that went up by the business, they could have done their business and nobody would have known it's there anyway.
Yeah, they were the ones that brought it to our attention that there was still, the city still had
Ownership.
interest in it,
Yeah.
ownership, and we're like, oh, okay,
That one made.
Oh,
so.
which one was this? Oh, that little corner one,
Yeah.
the UDOT one.
And the-
by the way, my wife used to work in the assessor's office in Clark County. Okay, where it grew from 30,000 to 2 million. She said we had thousands of those little pieces in Clark County whenever we started getting really expanding. And she says it was common all the time.
These little orphan pieces.
So-
Yeah.
So that one made sense, the junior high made sense, and the one that was just dirt and led nowhere
It
really.
didn't go to a park, it didn't.
This one from street. to
So I
street.
thought we did a good job and I thought the people were mostly
Mhm.
happy about it.
I don't know how the others felt, but I feel like I made my point on that, so.
You know, I was
Such a
looking
good
at that old
mindset.
neighborhood where that one, that Derwin went through. I noticed that there's, and you see it from time to time, but when did it ever make sense to have, well, let me finish. Well, the trails is one thing, but to not have sidewalks in a neighborhood. When did that ever make sense?
Tax issue, assessment districts. And people who get elected don't want to charge you and you and you, or the developer. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
Vegas again.
I mean, I'm guessing that was a seventies.
Oh, it's older.
It's
than
older
that.
than
Is it
that.
really?
It's
Yeah.
forever.
Cause I saw stuff like that go
It's
through, you
forever.
know, but
And if you look at most of those homes, it's a one-car garage.
yeah, sure.
The last
Yeah, yeah.
neighborhood that I lived
And
in,
even there, it's just a 50 foot right away, where all the others are 60 foot.
the last neighborhood I lived in, the houses were between $600,000 and $800,000. And we didn't have any sidewalks.
I mean, people that live in those still have kids.
Mhm.
They still want to ride their bikes, walk their dogs.
Yeah.
You know, let's make a small street so it doesn't make sense to walk in the street because there's not even room enough for cars.
When you get to the
And then not-
Halvern that has sidewalks with no curb and gutter.
Well,
You ought to be on the council for a few
Yeah.
times. and
you're
try to
pretty,
make
are
the
you
dollar
trying to be funny there?
No, and then there's I
That's an
know,
engineer's nightmare and I decided to live there.
and a subdivision in a city just south of us, they wanted to keep it rural. So there was no sidewalk, no curb and gutter.
Yep.
And it's a nightmare when it rains, there's no
Our neighborhood was
Wintertime's gotta
horse
be
trails.
brutal.
That's how-
wintertime, they're always plowing the gravel and
Mhm.
the sod that are right there. But they wanted an equestrian neighborhood, and that's what.
Well, I mean, in my neighborhood, show me one house that doesn't have a patch of weeds between the grass and the street. And that's the reason why, is because when the plows come through, they have no way of knowing where the landscape begins and the street ends, so they're always tearing it up. But anyway, that was brilliant minds.
It was a good idea once upon a time.
It was never a good idea, never upon a time.
Any other things that the commissioners want to bring up?
Yeah, I want to say to Steve, I thought you did a great job with this. Now, if you ever repeat that, I'll deny it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I understand.
It's recorded.
I understand being recorded.
It's open for anyone to see.
Anyhow, thank you, appreciate it.
No, I think we've seen some really cool things and big projects through the last little while.
We've done a couple of things in the last couple of
The
years.
mixed use, the general
I
plan.
think you're gonna see a lot more.
Yeah, I think one of them, once we get one of them and that was started and whatnot, then there'll be,
Well, there's a lot of them that are in the preparation stage, so.
they're seeing competition. If I don't do this, somebody else is gonna grab it. I mean,
But I look at a lot of this
Capitalism.
stuff and, I don't know if it's all the right thing to do. I don't think we'll know that until 20, 30 years down the road, but I feel like, the change has been needed in Roy and I don't think we're out anything to give it a shot. So I think it'll be pretty neat to see where it goes. And I agree with Tora. She's done a great job in guiding that. That's a lot of big, ambitious projects to tackle.
and with a little luck, none of us that are on the board will have to do it again.
Our kids will, so.
Maybe Steve will still be working, but
We're seeing kind of same thing happen in neighborhoods close by. It seems like good things happen there as a result of this direction that they've gone. So I'm optimistic that'll, same thing will happen here.
I think the unintended consequence, at least that I didn't so much think about, I think it incentivizes the private sector. They have a reason now to do this, where
Well,
before it
Yeah,
was
I
very
think our-
expensive and didn't work and.
I think our ordinance wasn't necessarily in response to, but because we gotta remember, and those have been on it for a while. In 2016, we started this.
Yes,
With the Focus Roy being adopted in 2017, it kind of has foreseen what needs to happen, and then all of a sudden Northrop Grumman happened, I think was about 2017.
Yeah.
They started the idea,
Not being
and
serious, yeah.
so it's kind of just, I think it's gonna help, knowing subcontractors to Northrop Grumman wanna come is gonna help, bring in things that probably would have never happened before.
Yeah.
Most people think of office space, you don't need it anymore, because I can work from home, telecommute, teleoffice, telemeeting.
That'll pass.
Well, when you get contractors that wanna be near the main people,
If I fly 2,000 miles, I want to have a face to face.
Yeah. so.
Yeah, I think we started on this when the mayor was still on the commission. Or right
Yep.
after he left, yeah.
Yeah, we started on the council in 2018. Yep. So it's been a long time coming. I'm just glad it's finally done so we could finally get it going.
Cool.
Okay, well, on to the staff update then.
I really don't have much to update. I mean, this is my big project now that I get
Now you can take a breath, huh?
well, gotta get this done. Then I'll take a breath for a minute and then go on. But I don't have anything.
Okay, well, then I guess a motion is in order.
I move that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting's adjourned.
And by the way, we have a bare minimum.
What happens when you have a quorum of 5 and one steps away?
We have a bare minimum.
Well, we
Yeah,
have
you still have a
7, so
quorum.
quorum's 4,
Quorum's
but we're
four.
not making,
More than
Yeah, we got
quorum.
7.
but we're not making